We can start from the beginning.
Got it. Got it. Like,
Okay, so say whoever reads, I'd like that when you finish reading, you give a little quick summary of what you read or what you remember, how you think it can help you in your spiritual life. All right? It doesn't have to be a long speech, but something. These are very important things. You know, we read about all these important, most important parts of the process. And now this is explaining them more. So who will read first? Alika, you decide, you assign the readers, all right?
Okay, Maharaj.
evidence regarding
Evidence.
principle.
Okay, but first you want to read, but there is a noise in your background. Okay, evidence regarding devotional principles. Accepting the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. On the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd chapter, verse 21, Prabhupada tells Narad Muni, Prabhupada tells Narad Muni, my dear king, please know for certain that in the material world there is no happiness. It is simply a mistake to think that there is happiness here. Because nothing but miserable conditions. Any person who is seriously desirous of achieving real happiness must seek out a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of a spiritual master is that he must have realized the conclusion of the scriptures by deliberation and argument, and thus be able to convince others of these conclusions. Such great personalities who have taken shelter of the Supreme Godhead, leaving aside all material considerations, are to be understood as bona fide spiritual masters. Everyone should try to find such a bona fide spiritual master in order to fulfill his mission of life, which is to transfer himself to the plane of spiritual bliss. The purport is that one should not accept as a spiritual master someone who is full number one, who has no direction according to the scriptural injunctions, whose character is doubtful, who does not follow the principles of devotion and service, or who has not conquered the influence of these six sense gratifying agents. These six agents of sense gratification are the tongue, the genital, the belly, anger, the mind, and words. Anyone who has practiced controlling these six is permitted to make disciples all over the world. To accept such a spiritual master is the crucial point for advancement in spiritual life. One who is fortunate enough to come under the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master is sure to traverse the path of spiritual salvation without any doubt. So that is the first section of this chapter 7, subtitled Accepting the Shelter of a Bona Fide Spiritual Master. So the summary here in this two-paragraph summary by Srila Prabhupada is, first and foremost, establishing the fact that in this material world there is no happiness. And if at all someone needs or wants to be happy, then for him to be able to, because the material world is full of so much of unhappiness, having found oneself in this world of unhappiness, to be able to achieve any form of happiness, one has to take shelter of a bona fide representative of God's spiritual master. Thirdly, that such a spiritual master must be qualified, must be bona fide. And Srila Prabhupada quoted Srila Rupa Goswami, Nectar of Instructions, that for one to be a spiritual master, he must be master of the six senses, or six gratifying senses, as Prabhupada stated it, including the tongue, the belly, the genital, the mind, the one's tongue. And if such a person is able to do this, then he's qualified to be a spiritual master. So such a seeker who seeks to be happy must take shelter of such a personality. And that is the means of becoming happy in the material world. Hare Krishna.
So, okay, who's next?
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Kumara Prabhu, please go ahead. Asmini Kumara Prabhu,
Yeah,
please go
okay,
ahead.
thank you. Accepting initiation from the spiritual master and receiving instructions from him. Sage Prabhupada continued to speak to the king as follows. My dear king, a disciple has to accept a spiritual master not only as a spiritual master, but also as the representative of the spiritual personality of Godhead and the super soul. In other words, the disciple should accept the spiritual master as God, because he is the external manifestation of Krishna. This is confirmed in every scripture, and the disciple should accept the spiritual master as such. One should learn Srimad Bhagavatam seriously, with all respect and veneration for the spiritual master. Hearing and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam is a religious process which elevates one to the platform of serving and loving the supreme personality of Godhead. The attitude of the disciple should be to satisfy the bona fide spiritual master. Then it will be very easy for him to understand spiritual knowledge. This is confirmed in the Vedas. And Rupa Goswami will further explain that for a person who has unflinching faith in God and in the spiritual master, everything becomes revealed very easily. Hare Krishna. Yeah. What I've deduced, Maharaj, from this particular heading is that as we just heard from the first heading, the spiritual master is loaded with spiritual knowledge or knowledge of the Vedas. And the Vedas, knowledge of the Vedas is the eye of the spiritual master. At the moment, we cannot see Krishna. We are not qualified to see him, or we don't have the qualification to see him. And so the spiritual master so far should be our God. He represents Krishna on our behalf. Whatever we do in life, we must consult the spiritual master, because he's having all the knowledge of Krishna, or most of the knowledge from Krishna. And so whatever we need to hear from him, we need to consult the guru, so that he can give us that insight. Without that, we cannot progress in our spiritual platform. This must understanding of this particular heading. Hare Krishna.
Okay, good. We don't want to be Kali Yuga disciples who say, my dear Guru, now I've taken initiation, so let me tell you what you should do.
That is impossible. It's impossible. You cannot, assuming Krishna is representing, or Krishna, you can see Krishna, you cannot tell Krishna whatever you want. Krishna have to tell you what
we
you want
do
to do.
We do have disciples like that sometimes.
Oh, well, that is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's not according to scripture. Because many times we won't understand the spiritual master and we'll think I know better. So we have to be very careful.
Thank you, Maharaj.
It happens all the time, to international society. And it's not just your Diksha Guru, but, we have authorities within the temple or, the society. And we also have to cooperate and work for the pleasure of Krishna and the devotees, for the pleasure of the spiritual master. Because when we work for the pleasure of the spiritual master, it may not seem like what I want to do. We may think, no, this is not what the people want us to do. But if we satisfy Krishna, that's the only thing everybody has in common, that Krishna is in everybody's heart. Otherwise, we try to satisfy one group of non-devotees, but another group won't like it. We try to satisfy this type of person, that type of person. But if we just try to satisfy Krishna, who's in everyone's heart, can make everybody happy. Thank you very much. So
Thank
these are
you.
very important. These are the 5 most important things. And you see, it's very simple, but it's very straightforward. There's no compromise. Okay, next.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Who will read next?
Sarvamayi Mataji, could you read?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Following in the footsteps of the saintly persons. In the Skanda Purana, it is advised that a devotee follow the past acharyas and saintly persons, because by such following one can achieve
Sarvamayi Mataji, we're not hearing you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Haribo. Is everyone hearing? I cannot hear her from here.
Yeah, we can hear you, Prabhu.
Are you hearing the Mataji's reading?
I can't hear the Mataji.
sorry, my
I
connection
can-
is
Now
not
it's
good.
on.
Okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Instead, he will simply create disturbances for the sincere student of devotional service. Those who do not strictly follow the principle of Bible scriptures are generally called sahajiyas. Those who has imagined everything to be cheap, who have their own concocted idea, and who do not follow the scriptural injunctions. Such persons are simply creating disturbances in the discharge of devotional service. In this connection, an objection may be raised by those who are not in devotional service and do not care for the revealed scriptures. An example of this is seen in Buddhist philosophy. Lord Buddha appeared in the family of high-grade Kshatriya king, but his philosophy was not in accord with the Vedic conclusions and therefore was rejected. Under the patronage of Hindu king Maharaj Ashoka, the Buddhist religion was spread all over India and adjoining countries. However, after the appearance of the great Stalwart teacher Shankaracharya, this Buddhism was driven out beyond the border of India. The Buddhists or the other religious who do not care for the revealed scriptures sometimes say that there are many devotees of Lord Buddha who show devotional service to Lord Buddha and who therefore should be considered devotees. In answer to this argument, Rupa Goswami says that the followers of Buddha cannot be accepted as devotees. Although Lord Buddha is accepted as an incarnation of Krishna, the followers of such incarnation are not very advanced in their knowledge of the Vedas. To study the Vedas, means to come to the conclusion of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, any religious principle which denies the supremacy of personality of Godhead is not accepted and is called atheism. Atheism means defying the authority of the Vedas and decrying the great acharyas who teach Vedic scriptures for the benefit of the people in general. Lord Buddha is accepted as an incarnation of Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But in the same Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that Lord Buddha appears in order to bewilder the atheistic class of the men. Therefore, his philosophy is meant for bewildering the atheist and should not be accepted. If someone asks, why should Krishna propagate atheist principle? The answer is that it was the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to end the violence of which was the being committed in the name of the Vedas. The so-called religionists were falsely using the Vedas to justify such violent act to meat eating, and Lord Buddha came to lead the fallen people away from such false interpretation of the Vedas. Also, for the atheist, Lord Buddha preached atheism so that they would follow him and thus be tricked into devotional service to the Lord Buddha or Krishna. Inquiring about external religious principles. In the Naradiya Puran, it is said, if one is actually very serious about devotional service,
Hare
then
Krishna,
all
Mother.
of his
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I think you can explain the that section, and another person will read the next section.
Sorry, what I didn't understand.
Reading one section by one person. So after one section, you explain.
Okay. It is written here that Buddhism
And try to explain the one you have read, Sava Mahigobi. Try to explain the one you have read already.
I'm explaining. Can you hear, Prabhuji?
Try to explain. Just explain what you have read. Summarize it. Summarize what you have read.
Yeah, make
Sorry?
a comment, what you realize from it, how we can apply it in your life.
Okay. Apply in our life that we should follow the our acharyas who knows the Vedas clearly, and we should not follow the atheists that they just believe in satisfying the senses. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, anything else? What does that mean, practical
Here it is,
application?
and here it is explained that Buddhism is the religion, but it is not, we should not follow that because it was the devotees is not real devotees, that they are following the Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Mother, the network is
My network
Okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
not good. because of no light. There is no power since morning.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Should I read ahead?
Who is speaking in the background here? Is it Radhika? You're not supposed to speak when you're not reading or explaining anything. Always keep your phone, your voice muted. Okay. We have who is next here? Who has not read? Who is Radhika Safaria? Radhika Safaria, can you unmute and read?
My phone is not properly working, so I joined with my daughter phone.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I got confused about that. Okay, so that now I understand. Is that no problem? So Anandini Dhanam Prabhu, please kindly unmute and read the next section.
Okay. Yeah.
Anandini
Yeah,
Dhanam
Krishna
Prabhu.
Prabhu.
So you read being prepared and inquiring about eternal, because they are all just one sentences. Then you continue with residing in a sacred place. Then you stop there. You understand?
Okay.
You read from inquiring about eternal religious principles, being prepared to give up everything, and then residing in a sacred place, because they are just short.
Okay. So the screen has to be stable because I'm reading from the screen. Okay. Dandavat Pranam Maharaj, please, I beg to offer my humble obeisances and Dandavat to the assembly devotees also. In the Naradiya Purana, it is said, if one is actually very serious about devotional service, then all of his purposes will be served without any delay. Then being prepared to give up everything material for Krishna satisfaction. In the Padma Purana, it is stated, for one who has given up all his material sense enjoyment and has accepted the principle of devotional service, the opulences of Vishnuluka, the kingdom of God, is awaiting.
Okay. Comment one by one.
Okay. So here, Krishna is the proprietor of everything. Actually, we are just the caretakers. So whatever we might have, we have to surrender it to devotional service. Or you have to tell it to devotional service, thereby seeing the Krishna as a supreme personality whom everything belongs to. We are just the caretaker. And before then, when for one who has given up the material sense enjoyment. So here, even though we are talking material sense enjoyment, we can enjoy in Krishna consciousness also. So it's just the opposite. That's that we give up the material sense enjoyment, then we enjoy in Krishna consciousness. So that is my understanding there also.
And anyway, that one sentence, if one is actually very serious about devotional service, all his purposes will be served. So we have to focus on that to get really serious. Then everything else we're trying to do will work. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If we're not so serious about devotional service, but we're trying to enjoy and we want to control the devotees or whatever, then we won't get very far. But if we're really serious about surrendering to Krishna, that's devotional service. And just following the order of the Guru, working only to please the Guru, and everything will flourish. Okay, it's a beautiful sentence.
Thank you. So, okay, residing in a sacred place. Yeah.
sacred place.
In the Skanda Purana, it is also in 6 months, for 1 month, or even for 1 fortnight. There is awaiting elevation in the Vaikuntha locus, and all the profit of thank you, the privilege of having the same 400 bodily creatures as Narayan. So here, Narayan has been told us the other time that even though we might not physically be in Dwaraka, Vrindavan, Mayapur, but whatever the deities of Krishna is worshipped, is a sacred place. So we should try to worship deities and serve them. And we'll go ahead and mention that whosoever that is serving the deities, rendering direct service to the deities. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. And that's any temple. And of course, simply by chanting Hare Krishna,
Can you hear me?
you can get much more because you can go to Goloka Vrindavan. All right. Next. It's the same section, Brahma Purana. Finish the whole section between the green lines, you know.
Okay. Now, it is said, the transcendental significance of Purushotama, Kshetra, or Jagannatha cannot be properly described in an electric system. Siddhartha Puri as having exactly the same bodily features possessed by one in Vaikuntha. That is the demigod. That is the demigods. See the inhabitants of the Jagannatha Puri as being 400. When there was a meeting of great sages at Rameshiranya, Sutta Goswami was reciting Shima Bhagavatam, and the importance of the Ganges was stated as follows. The waters of the Ganges are always carrying the flavor of tulsi offered at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And as such, the waters of Ganges are ever flowing, spreading the glories of Lord Krishna. However, the waters of Ganges are flowing, all will be sanctified both externally
Internally.
and internally. Even the demigods, see, let me read them. In the Brahma Purana, it is said that the transcendental significance of Purushotama Jagannatha cannot be properly described. Even the demigod from the higher planetic system see the inhabitants of this Jagannatha Puri as having exactly the same bodily features. So here, my understanding is, even though the way both in Jagannatha Puri and Vaikuntha planet to be the same, and Sutta Goswami also was describing the same thing to the sages in Namya Shiranya, telling them that the Ganges is flowing directly from the spiritual sky, which is offered to Lord Krishna. And he said, this flow eternally. There is no time it ceases to flow. Hare Krishna.
Okay, and now, of course, Puri is much more auspicious because Lord Chaitanya lived there continuously for 18 years. So for us, you know, that's really spectacular. Everywhere you look, there's some pastime of Lord Chaitanya. Everything is so much purified by Lord Chaitanya's having been there all that time, and all the kirtans. Not only Lord Chaitanya, but Haridas Thakur, Rupa Swami. So many great devotees live there to be with Lord Chaitanya. All right, very good. And the Ganges, we can invoke the Ganges. We have mantra. But the Gita Mahatmya says that reading the Gita is more powerful than the Ganges. The Ganges is so great, but reading the Bhagavad Gita is even better.
Okay.
Okay, who's next, Salika? This one everybody does. It's not so hard.
Raganuga Bhakti, please kindly unmute and read. Raganuga Bhakti.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Accepting only what is necessary. In the Naratiya Purana, it is directed, one should not accept more than necessary if he is serious about discharging devotional service. The purpose is that one should not neglect following the principles of devotional service, nor should one accept the rulings of devotional service that are more than what he can easily perform. For example, it may be said that one should chant the Hare Krishna mantra at least 100,000 times daily on his beads. But if this is not possible, then one must minimize his chanting according to his own capacity. Generally, we recommend our disciples to chant at least 16 rounds on their japa beads daily, and this should be completed. But if one is not even able to chant 16 rounds, then he must make it up the next day. He must be sure to keep his vow. If he does not strictly follow this out, then he is sure to be negligent. That is offensive in the service of the Lord. If we encourage offenses, we should not be able to make progress. If we encourage offenses, we should not
We shall not
be able to make progress in devotional service. It is better if one fixes up a regulative principle according to his own ability and then follows that vow without fail. That will make him advance in spiritual life. Hare Krishna. Observing fasting on Ekadashi.
Hare Krishna, you explain this, accepting only what is necessary, your understanding. Okay. You need to explain what you've read. Your understanding in your own words. Few sentences. We're going to get back to Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
It's out of the screen now. So if you could show it for me.
Yeah, we want you to explain what you have read. I know I removed the screen so that you can be free to explain your own words.
Oh, okay. So, according to what we just read, accepting what is necessary for devotional service implies that first, we should be honest about our devotional service. So the vows that we've taken to chant 16 rounds, we should make sure that we fulfill this vow. And if in some circumstances we are not able to complete our daily 16 rounds of chanting, the following day, we should make arrangement to finish it. It is also encouraged that we should chant at least 1,000 times on our chanting bead. However, if one is not able to do that, it is advisable he considers his strength, what he is able to do, and then chant it. So accepting what is necessary simply implies that we should not serve the Lord out of a show. However, whatever we do should be sincere. It should come out of our hearts and our real strength, not that we are doing to please others. So this is what at least I can deduce from what I just read.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Maharaj wants to comment before we go forward?
No. It's nice to hear everybody speak like that, though. And Ekadasi is important. We get a lot of questions. A lot of devotees have this idea that, you know, if they're fasting on Ekadasi, it's very great and they're better than other devotees. And the whole purpose of Ekadasi is just to fast. And many, after fasting, you know, at whatever time, the sunrise or the next morning, they have a feast. So that you know, they're thinking about that while they're fasting. But it says here, the real purpose is not just to fast, but to increase one's faith and love for Krishna. The real reason for observing fasting is to minimize the demands of the body and engage our time in the service of the Lord by chanting or performing similar service. The best thing to do is to remember the pastimes of Govinda and to hear his holy name constantly. So if someone does that more, even if they don't fast, you know, like Nirjala fast or something, they're doing better than someone that fasts but sleeps all day or just dreams about what they're going to eat the next day. Or sometimes devotees criticize the devotees who aren't fasting, you know, that they're not following the real Ekadasi. So it's an important thing to think about. The real purpose of fasting, Ekadasi, Janmashtami, any day, is to relieve the body. Even materially, it's very beneficial, health-wise. But is to not have to take so much trouble eating and digesting and cleansing and cleaning up after cooking and all these things, and concentrate on the holy name, chant more, you know, do all day kirtan or something. That's perfect. All right. Offering respect to the banyan tree. We don't do that so much, but please read it. It's a short one.
Offering respect to the Banyan. In the Skanda Purana, it is directed that a devotee should offer water to the Tulasi plant and the Malaka trees. He should offer respect to the cows and to the brahmanas. and should serve the Vaishnavas by offering them respectful obeisances and meditating upon them. All of these processes will help the devotee to diminish the reaction to his past sinful activities. Hare Krishna.
So we're all worshiping Chelsea.
Yeah, Maharaj, I actually want to add a question in that regard.
What's your question?
From the explanation of the Prabhupada here, the conclusion, it starts looking as if offering Tulasi water and worshiping Tulasi is a punya karma activity. And worshiping of Tulasi is conceived to be a devotional activity, which is beyond the jurisdiction of karma and punya or pious credits. So how do we explain this? Because from this explanation, it's looking as if it's some pious activities rather than bhakti.
I mean, someone's saying that worshiping Tulsi is not bhakti?
I'm saying from the explanation of the Prabhupada here, it is said that all of these processes will help the devotees to diminish the reaction to his past sinful activities. So how do we differentiate this from pious activities? Because pious activities is to neutralize or reduce our past and present sinful activities. So if worshiping Tulsi or watering Tulsi also helps to diminish sinful reactions, how do we separate that from punya karma or pious activities?
Well, Tulsi is Krishna's favorite. Tulsi is a pure devotee. And Tulsi is Krishna's favorite plant. So by pleasing Krishna, that helps us. You know, karma, only Krishna can take away the karma. So when we do devotional things that are pleasing to Krishna, then he removes the karma. It's not like a material process. It's not like prayaschitta, for instance. You just do some good karma to balance out the bad karma. That when we do these worshiping Tulsi, we're even worshiping cows, offer respect to all of them because they're dear to Krishna and helps us remember Krishna. Serve the Vaishnavas, you know, by offering respects and by meditating on them. That sounds interesting. But they help the devotee diminish the reactions of sinful activities. Because one thing, there's a spiritual activity, so it's not sinful, but Krishna will take away, he'll reduce, you know. Devotees know that we deserve much worse than we're getting.
Thank you, Maharaj. Kavicandra Prabhu, you are here. Can you unmute and then read for us?
Okay.
Giving up the company of non-devotees. Lord Chaitanya was once asked by one of his householder devotees what the general behavior of a Vaishnava should be. In this connection, Lord Chaitanya replied that a Vaishnava should always give up the company of non-devotees. Then he explained that there are two kinds of non-devotees. One class is against the supremacy of Krishna, and another class is too materialistic. In other words, those who are after material enjoyment and those who are against the supremacy of the Lord are called a Vaishnava. and their company should be strictly avoided. In the Katyana Samhita, it is stated that even if one is forced to live in a cage of iron or in the midst of a blazing fire, he should accept this position rather than live with non-devotees who are true and true against the supremacy of the Lord. Similarly, in the Vishnu Rahasya, there is a statement to the effect that one should prefer to embrace a snake, a tiger, or alligator rather than associate with persons who are worshippers of various demigods and who are impelled by material desire. In the scriptures, it is instructed that one may worship a certain demigod if it is desirous of achieving some material gain. For example, one is advised to worship the sun god if he is desirous of getting rid of a disease condition. For a beautiful wife, one may worship Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. And for advanced education, one may worship Saraswati. Similarly, there is a list in the Srimad Bhagavatam for worshippers of all demigods according to different material desires. But all of these worshippers, although they appear to be very good devotees of the demigods, are still considered to be non-devotees. They cannot be accepted as devotees. The Mayavadis impersonally say that one may worship any form of the Lord and that it doesn't matter because one reaches the same destination anyway. But it is clearly stated in the Bhagavad Gita that those who are worshippers of the demigods will ultimately reach only the planet of those demigods, while those who are devotees of the Lord himself will be promoted to the Lord's abode, the kingdom of God. So actually, these persons who are worshippers of demigods have been condemned in the Gita. It is described that due to their lusty desires, they have lost their intelligence and have therefore taken to worshiping the different demigods. So in the Vishnu Rahasya, these demigods worshippers are forcefully condemned by the statement that it is better to live with the most dangerous animals than to associate with these persons. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you have to explain to us, purport, your understanding and realization.
Yeah, it is clearly explained there by Srila Prabhupada that it is better that we stay in a cage with the tigers and snakes than to stay with non-devotees. What it simply means that if you stay with these ferocious animals, they can kill you at once, so you will just die. And then your fate will be in your karma you have performed. But if you stay with non-devotees, gradually you will lose faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you, like Krishna mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, you will go down to hellish condition of life, which is more dangerous. So that is why it is advised here that better to stay with those animals who can just kill you at once than to go and stay with non-devotees who will pollute your mind gradually to lose faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is more dangerous because that will make you to go down to the lowest condition of life. So this is what it means here. And especially in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, in where there's this instruction from Rishabhadev, Lord Rishabhadev, is clearly mentioned here. Like they talk about materialistic case, specifically mentioned that even those who are different to those who are attached to women. That is the matter. When they talk materialistic, this is what it means. Because all the so-called sense gratification is all surrounded by attachment to opposite gender. So we should be very, very careful, even to be a friend to a friend of that kind of person. So it's a very, very self-explanatory. Srila Prabhupada explained everything. So we should be very conscious as a devotee that we don't joke with this kind of instruction. Even Srila Rupa Goswami mentioned it also in Nectar of Instruction. It was very, very explaining in the 6 principles of how we can increase our devotion to Krishna and how things we should avoid and things we should embrace. So all these things, they are the beginning of devotional service, and we have to take them very seriously if we really want to make advancement in spiritual life. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for giving me the opportunity.
Okay, now some devotees think when they hear this, don't associate with non-devotees, that we shouldn't preach because everybody's a non-devotee. And we shouldn't go out and talk to them. What about that?
Kavi Prabhu, please explain.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Yes,
Yeah.
Guru Maharaj.
And
Yes,
some say, well, I can't have a job because the other people are not devotees.
Yes, Guru
So
Maharaj.
what about that? What do you think
Thank you,
about
Guru. Yes, Guru Maharaj. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Yeah, actually, it's not like working with materialistic people or going outside to work with others. That is not what we mean by association. Association means actually hearing. Just like what we are doing here now, we are hearing about Krishna. When we go out for preaching also, what we do in preaching is we tell people about Krishna. Basically, that's what we're doing when we go out for preaching. So when you submissively listen to someone, that is association. That is when the association takes place. When you are submissively listening to what somebody is telling you without argument, without putting forth effort to dispute whatever is saying, you just accept. That is association. So that is what happened in the association of these Mayavadis. When you go to associate with these impersonalists, and they tell you their philosophy, try to convince you how God is not a person, or you go to the associate with somebody who is attached to a woman and telling you how wonderful is it to enjoy gratification with women. So when you are listening to these people, that is association. So, but when we go out to work, we don't listen to anyone. We just do our duty based on how we are instructed to do. And when we go out for preaching, we go there and tell the people about Krishna. We don't associate in that way. This is how I understand Guru Maharaj.
Okay, good. Right.
Thank you, Guru. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
No intimate association. We don't go out drinking with them and go to the movies with them and stuff.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
But we have to work, and if we do our work, we associate as much as necessary, and they'll be influenced favorably towards Krishna, actually, in due course of time. All right, next.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah, Bhakta Prince, are you in a better location now? Can you read? Bhakta Prince.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
I never understand what is going on first.
Okay, what we're doing is that we're reading a paragraph. We are reading a section where we are reading chapter 7 of Nectar of Devotion, and each devotee reads a particular section and share his or her realization. You get it now? There's so much of
I think there is a noise at the background. Maybe you can excuse him.
Yeah. So so who has not read, maybe we'll have to go around it. Okay, Shaitan Prema, our teacher is here. Shaitan Prema, can you bless us? Shaitan Prema Prabhu, are you with us or you are multitasking?
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay, please tell you help us with this next section. Not accepting unfit disciples, constructing many temples, or reading many books.
Okay. not accepting unfit disciples, constructing temples, or reading many books. Another stricture is that a person who have many disciples, but should not act in such a way that it will be obliged to any of them for some particular action or some favor. And one should also not be very enthusiastic about constructing new temples, nor should one be enthusiastic about reading various types of books, save and except the ones that lead to the advancement of devotional service. Practically, if one very carefully reads Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and this nectar of devotion, that will give him sufficient knowledge to understand the science of Krishna consciousness. One need not take the trouble of reading other books. Okay? So I think that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. So here, what I can understand is that devotees should not read so many books, speculation, this person's opinion, in the name of wanting to preach, even in the name of wanting to preach, because by reading, you are hearing all kinds of contaminating philosophy. And the material world, people counteract each other in order to become relevant. So for that, they have put their own personal or private speculation into books for people to read. So it's all chains of mental speculation. Whereas the essence of all knowledge is transcendental knowledge, which is already summarized and given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like Vyasa did, after compiling all the Vedas, describing all kinds of activities concerning Vana and Ashram, he was still despondent. And Ramuni appeared to him and told him the reason that actually is because he has not glorified the Lord exclusively. So this exclusive glorification of the Lord is in the Bhagavatam. So that is the essence. When you get the essence, and you can get and associate with the essence that is being presented by the pure devotees, there is no need to reading all other kinds of garbage. For devotees, therefore, all kinds of books on mental speculation are like a place of pilgrimage for cruise, as in the Bhagavatam. Na yatra amsa niramanti usikshaya. The devotees do not delight in them. But on the other hand, these books glorifying the Lord exclusively, even if imperfectly composed, they are constantly heard and sung and glorified by pure devotees. So we should not waste time reading all kinds of books because they are just the private speculation of some confused individuals. We should follow their chariots and save ourselves. That is one point. And also, sometimes it is fashionable to have many disciples, and sometimes some gurus, in the name of, or just because of what they can get from the disciples. When they need money, a particular disciple can give. And for that, they compromise. Instead of telling them the truth, they will not tell them the truth. They just pamper them, provided they are going to give money when money is needed. And by extension, sometimes in the temples, we also do that. A temple president may identify a particular donor and will always be flattering him just because of the donation he will give. On Jamasami, we go to him, go Punima, we go to him. Every festival, any amount he goes, he will give. So he will not tell him the truth. He will just be pampering him, telling him only what he would like to hear, and just pampering him because of what we get. It should not be like that. That the truth should not be compromised because of these external circumstances. And something like that.
Okay, now on that point, it's more like to actually take a disciple. Sometimes someone will take a disciple because he's very famous or because he's very rich. It's one thing to just get donations. Some people, that's all they can do is give donation. Sometimes, not in this kind, not so much, but many gurus, they just need anyone who comes, especially if they give a big donation. Sometimes they even have a fee for initiation, both gurus. But some is very cheap. I heard there's one guy in Vrindavan, it's like 10 rupees or something, and he has a big line of people getting initiated. But that's a little really crazy. But some temple presidents, before they'll recommend someone for initiation, they have to give a certain donation every month or something, and that's pretty easy to do for some people, but for other people, they may be highly qualified in every other way, but they can't afford to give so much donation, and then they can't get initiated. So sometimes the guru has nothing to do with that, but all kinds of crazy things go on. But we should be careful when we're recommending people for initiation to make sure that they're, not just because they give a lot of donations to the temple and I want them to love me, so I recommend them. We've had that happen too, where temple presidents, you have to do this and this, and then I'll recommend. And then after they recommend them, said, you can't talk to the guru, you can only talk to me. And I gave you the mercy, I recommended you, and these kind of things go on, so we don't want that, right? I hope it's not happening there, but it does happen. We have many reports. Constructing too many temples, of course, Prabhupada explains at the end there, we need a lot of new disciples to spread the movement. But we have to be careful. We have to train them up. And then we need temples also, but we can't be just mad after building a temple. We have to have the proper, reason. Like Prabhupada was so anxious to build temples in India. In other countries, he never pushed to building temples, just rent some place and have a temple. But in India, when you build a temple, it brings people in like anything. It's huge preaching. In other places, it just becomes an expense. Okay. Very good. Some interesting things. What's the next one?
The next one is in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Read, Prabhuji.
So, okay, and I didn't know, Prabhu, what you want to ask a question?
Yes, please. My question is based on one need not to take the trouble to read other books. But as a preacher, I think, especially we that we in Christian countries, preaching to such people, you need to know what they are about or the kind of religion they are by way of reading the kind of scripture they have. So here I need a little explanation on this part, because for me, I try to read the Bible in order to preach. So if we are not to take the trouble to read other books, I don't really understand. So I need explanation on that part.
It's one thing to know a little bit. Here it's talking about, basically it's like reading a lot of books for prestige, so I can quote so many Puranas and Vedas and so many obscure things that nobody else knows and be noted as a big wise man and scholar. But Prabhupada's, like the Bible, for instance, and the Quran, they've been misinterpreted in so many ways, and people are very polluted. So if we just preach the truth of the Bhagavatam, a sincere Christian or anybody, they'll understand it. But to know a little bit, basically, but we know basically they're teaching love of God. They're teaching that lust, greed, and anger are enemies, and the same things, except without Krishna. But that's another thing. We can know a little bit, but mostly we know from our previous life, we know enough. But it doesn't hurt to read a little bit, but to study, to be noted as a scholar. This is more or less what this is talking about. We've seen some devotees do that. They go to Vrindavan, they go to the Rasa Bihari bookstore, and they buy hundreds of books and Puranas and Upanishads, all obscure things. And they dig out all kinds of information that nobody else knows. And they can bewilder a lot of innocent people. But for knowing about Krishna, the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and this Nectar devotion is sufficient. Even the Bhagavatam, if you read 41 pages a day, it takes you 1 year to finish. It's quite, and then you'll just want to read it again because it's so wonderful. So we'd have to read so many other books, and Prabhupada is, at this time, these are the books that he had published, and other Vedic literatures is mostly what he's referring to. Say if someone's getting a PhD in physics, they have to read the physics books. And if they're, for a devotee, they have to study that. If they're going to be a doctor, they have to read the doctor books. But this is to think that you need these other books to actually know about Krishna, that they won't teach you about Krishna. They might help you live in this world, deal with people. We might have to read some psychology book, medical books. We need to know these management books, architecture books. Otherwise, how can we live in this world? Right? If you're going to be a car mechanic, you have to read some car mechanic books. But that's not to learn about Krishna. What it's talking about here is reading other books to think I can learn more about Krishna, more than Prabhupada knows, which many devotees have done. They learn a little Sanskrit and they read so many books and think, now I know more. Oh, there's more in this section. So please go ahead.
So Chaitanya Prema Prabhu, are you still there? Want to continue?
I'm there. In the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 13th chapter, verse 8, Narada Muni, while discussing with Maharaj Yudhishthira the various functions of the different orders of society, especially mentions rules for the sannyasis, those persons who have renounced this material world. One who has accepted the sannyas order of life is forbidden to accept a disciple, anyone who is not fit. A sannyasi should first of all examine whether a prospective student is sincerely seeking Krishna consciousness. If he is not, it should not be accepted. However, Lord Chaitanya's causeless mercy is such that he advised all bona fide spiritual masters to speak about Krishna consciousness everywhere. Therefore, in the line of Lord Chaitanya, even the sannyasis can speak about Krishna consciousness everywhere. And if someone is seriously inclined to become a disciple, the sannyasi always accepts it. So, yeah, this is also very clear that a sannyasi, especially, should not accept disciples that are not qualified. He should seriously examine the disciples before taking them. Because if once you take a disciple, you have taken the responsibility to take him back home, back to God. And if a sannyasi doesn't scrutinizingly study the prospective disciple before taking him, it might constitute a lot of problem if he, especially is a materialistic kind of person who is trying to become a disciple, who has ulterior motive, trying to take initiation. So first, the disciple has to be qualified, and the guru has to be qualified. That is when there is the journey is easy. The sannyasi, the guru has qualification, is expected to acquire. He must be versed in the scripture. He cannot, leave the disciple when the disciple asks serious questions. He cannot answer him. It should not be, because you give him chance to start going to other places and start losing faith in him. So the guru has to be versed in the scripture, and he has to be properly connected to the Param. So he has to have his own guru, who is also a guru in the disciplic succession. He has to be connected to the Param. So for that, if a guru is like that and it takes unqualified disciple cause a lot of problems, as we know, because all this karma, since the guru has taken vow to take him back to God, he has to absorb, a reaction. So there's a condition at the time of initiation that you have to do that. I will take you back as long as you are chanting it's a contract. So if after making the contract, the disciple, out of worldly mindedness, does not honor his part of the contract, it makes it difficult for the guru. It makes it difficult. Sometimes some gurus become sick. Some gurus leave the planet quickly because of unqualified disciples. Because any sinful activity you perform after taking initiation is additional load for the guru. If a guru has taken many disciples who are deviating, who are not following, who are not fulfilling their part of the contract, the burden becomes very, very heavy on the guru. See? But Krishna consciousness is so transcendental, Lord Chaitanya's movement is so transcendental that the gurus do not separately think of saving themselves. They make it a sacrifice. Anybody who shows a little interest, they try to accept the person, connect him to the process of Krishna consciousness. Then, since the guru is sincere, the Paramparam also take charge and they purify the person alongside. So in our systems, the gurus do not think of their own personal liberation. Instead, they offer everything into the fire of transcendence. So they take disciples and connect them to the system, and Lord Chaitanya's mercy will sustain such a guru who doesn't have any ulterior motive, but just to connect for the new souls. So that's where the guru, out of their extra mercy, they accept all kinds of people and offer them to Lord Chaitanya. Seeing that they are being sent by Lord Chaitanya, they don't reject them, the extra mercy. However, anybody taking a guru should know that if he doesn't follow, he is creating problem for the guru. So that is it. Hare Krishna. The disciple must be qualified. There are qualifications expected of a disciple. Many. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So that is it. Maharaj can take it from there.
Okay, Maharaj is not on seat right away, but maybe we'll continue reading as tradition. Maharaj is busy himself like that.
Okay.
So what we do is that who's here now? Savramai Gopi Mataji.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
you can
Prabhu.
continue from where Krishna Prabhu stopped.
Should I read?
Yes, please go ahead.
The one point is that without increasing the number of disciples, there is no propagation of the cult of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sometimes even at the risk, a sannyasi is in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may accept even a person who is not thoroughly fit to become a disciple. Later on, by the mercy of such a bona fide spiritual master, the disciple is gradually elevated. However, if one increases the number of disciples simply for some prestige or false honor, he will surely fall down in the matter of executing Krishna consciousness. Similarly, a bona fide spiritual master has no business reading many books simply to show his proficiency or to get popularity by lecturing in different places. One should avoid all these things. It is also stated that a sannyasi should not enthusiastic about constructing temples. We can see in the lives of various acharyas in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that they are not very enthusiastic about construction temple. However, if somebody comes forward to offer some service, the same reluctant acharya will encourage the building of costly temple by such servitors. For example, Rupa Goswami was offered a favor by Maharaj Man Singh to commander-in-chief of Emperor Akbar, and Rupa Goswami instructed him to construct a large temple for Govindaji, which cost vast amount of money. So, a bona fide spiritual master should not personally take any responsibility for constructing temples. But if someone has money and wants to spend it in the service of Krishna, an acharya like Rupa Goswami may utilize the devotee's money to construct a nice, costly temple for the service of the Lord. Unfortunately, it happens that someone who is not fit to become spiritual master may approach wealthy person to contribute the temple construction. If such money is utilized by unqualified spiritual master for living comfortably in costly temples without actually doing any preaching work, it is not acceptable. In other words, a spiritual master needn't be very enthusiastic for constructing temple buildings simply in the name of so-called spiritual advancement. Rather, his first and foremost activity should be to preach. In this connection, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj recommended that a spiritual master print books if one has money. Instead of constructing costly temple, one should spend his money for the publication of authorized books in different languages for propagating the Krishna consciousness movement. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So,
Thank you very much, Sabha Gopi Mataji.
should I read? Or will
Yes, can you explain something that maybe Maharaj can comment after? Anadini from I've seen your hand. I will call you. Just hold on. Sabha Gopi Mataji, please, can you
Yeah.
in a few seconds?
Here explain that the spiritual master or Acharya should not take interest in building the temples. They should and they should give that uh, give the opportunity to the other who has the money if they are interested, but not by themselves. And here mentioned that some people build contact with the rich people and construct the temples for their benefit, to stay luxurious life and get prosperous and publicity in the public. For that they build the temple. But it is mentioned that the acharyas or spiritual masters should print the books. They should not be interested in building the temples and preach more by printing the books. Hare Krishna, in different languages.
Thank you very much for your explanation. Anandini Dhanam Prabhu, please.
Okay, yeah, Hare
Unmute
Krishna,
and let
thank you.
us-
So, talking about constructing temples, which is not the priority, but rather book printing. I think that's why this year something has been posted on Hare Krishna African platform, whereby a plot of land is somewhere that a devotee thinks when he's in preaching. And came out to say we shouldn't be concerned about the temple construction there now, but rather we should emphasize on book distribution. But later on, the same set of plot, the devotee came out, purchased it, and temple is about to erect. And we don't know how much book distribution is going on there now. So can we say that it's an offense to the spiritual master? Because he is saying we shouldn't be concerned about erecting a temple or constructing a temple there now. But the devotee instead foresee that, oh, maybe rather we should construct a temple there. So my question here, can we then say it's an offense? I don't know if my question is clear.
Yeah, there were breakages in the course of your explanation, but let me reiterate what I had. What you are saying is that some devotee, you said some plot of land is purchased somewhere, and the devotee is trying to build a house, build a temple rather. But you are not sure whether the level of preaching is going on there. So your question is that should temple building be encouraged? Is that what you are trying to ask?
Yeah, what I mean is when the article was published, when the post was put on a Hare Krishna African platform, Kavicandra Swami came out to say that we shouldn't be concerned about constructing a temple there now, but rather book distribution should go on there. But the devotee came out, bought the said land, which he intends building a temple there now. So my question is, can we then say it's an offense to a spiritual master? Because he said we shouldn't be concerned about building temple there now. But the devotee is saying, okay, he has the means, so he can purchase the said land and construct a temple.
Okay, I think I get your question. Your question is that that devotee going ahead to buy the land to build a temple against the instruction of the spiritual master, that
of the spiritual
effort should be put more into preaching now. Is it an offense? You're trying to understand that whether it's an offense. Okay, Maharaj is here. So Maharaj will answer your question. Maharaj, Anandini Dhanam Prabhu is asking, based on your guidance, that we should focus more on the expanding preaching activities and book distribution. The devotee is still going ahead to build other temples, despite the fact that we have so many other temples that are not occupied. So he is asking, is this an offense to the spiritual master, or could it be understood in different ways?
Well, we don't like to say that, but Prabhupada was very anxious to build temple in Mayapur, Vrindavan, Bombay, but all of those temples, by building them, he engaged many, many devotees, many, many people, and when they're established, it makes book distribution and everything else happen. Now, in other places, that's not always the case. But like it says here, if somebody comes forward and they want to help you build a temple, but we have to be careful that building the temple doesn't stop all the other preaching and the taking care of devotees and making new devotees, and just get mad after money. We even see that I've seen it in Africa, some of these Christian preachers, they get a good following in their tents. Then they go mad after collecting money to build a temple, and they don't ever finish the temple. They just get started and all their people go away because they're just asking for money all the time. So we have to be careful. You know what I mean? We have to know that we have enough members and we have enough, but we need some kind of temple. But we don't need a big opulent temples everywhere. Look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons. They're growing like anything, but when they do build a place, they just build a very simple building where they can meet and study their scripture and organize their preaching. And they keep bringing people in. All right? So don't think offense, don't start criticizing devotees, but I don't know which particular place you're talking about, so I can't comment. But
I think he's talking about Media, where they're trying to build the Jagannath temple. Is it another place, another Nidhi problem?
well, that's not the devotees trying to build it. That's some other people.
Yeah.
Well, no. The state this thing I'm talking is about Takoradi.
Okay, Takoradi.
Yeah.
Takoradi doesn't have an Islamic temple, right?
Pardon me.
Takoradi doesn't have an established temple. They have only using a small devotee house to preach until recent time, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think Takoradi needs a temple because then they do. I've seen occasionally their Sankirtan, Harinam, and then I think that Takoradi requires to have a temple with several years of preaching activities there. But I also understand your point that yes, most of our temples are empty. We don't have people there to do the basic service of taking care of the deities, cleaning the temple. This is a big challenge. But each and every other time I see Takoradi Harinam, I think I always see an average of about 10, 12, both young and old people going on Harinam. And if they add that kind of number of persons, I think they should be able to manage a preaching center or temple, whichever what name they want to call it. So, but for such a place, I think it is due for temple because it's an old place. We've been preaching there for several years. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it might be good. Just we don't want to overdo it and build, go into huge debt and.
So thank you. But Guru Maharaj, should not be
So, let's not talk about, that's not suitable for this class. That's a whole nother thing, but because, Prabhupada is saying that, like not too many disciples, but then he made many disciples because we need disciples to carry on, but we shouldn't just take disciples that are not qualified just because they can give money or something. This way we test people, make them wait, and they're chanting 16 rounds for a year, 2, 3 years, right? To make sure we're hopefully getting people that are fully qualified.
Okay, so can we go back to the teachings?
Yeah, back to the book. All right.
Oh, yeah. Straightforwardness in ordinary dealings, equilibrium in loss and gain.
Yeah. Okay.
Who wants to read this? And I didn't then Prabhu, please go ahead and read this.
Oh, okay, Prabhu. There is a statement in the Padma Purana. Person who are engaged in Krishna consciousness should never be disturbed by some material gain or loss. Even if there is some material loss, one should not be perturbed, but should always think of Krishna within himself. The purport is that every conditioned soul is always absorbed in thinking, to be absorbed in thinking of material. Let me take it again. The purpose is that every conditioned soul is always absorbed in thinking of materialistic activities. He has to free himself from such thought and transfer himself completely to Krishna consciousness. As we have already explained, the basic principle of Krishna consciousness is always to think of Krishna. One should not be disturbed in material loss, but rather should concentrate his mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord. A devotee should not be subjected to lamentation or illusion. There is the following statement in the Padma Purana: within the heart of a person who is empowered by lamentation or anger, there is no possibility of Krishna being manifested. So here, what I'm trying to deduce here is, in our daily activity, trying to discharge our Krishna consciousness, we should not be attached to whatever activities we are doing, but rather we should be detached and attached to Krishna. Thereby, the so-called laws that we may incur, we will not be affected by it. So that is what I can deduce from what I've read. Hare Krishna.
All right. Okay, good. What's next?
The demigods.
Okay, should I continue reading there?
The straightforward and ordinary dealings.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
To be honest in all our dealings, you know, if we're doing business or whatever. But like one girl in Japan, she was saying, well, that means if you don't like someone, you tell them like, you stupid, I don't like you, you know, you're crazy. That's being straightforward. No, that's not being straightforward. That's being obnoxious. But straightforward means you tell the truth, you know, you don't cheat, you know, you do things the way they're supposed to be done. Okay, the demigods. Any demigod worshippers here?
Hare Krishna.
Remember somebody came from England and they brought a Ganesh deity and they said the reason they're poor in Ghana is because they're not worshiping Ganesh. And they thought we should make a Ganesh temple. It was a big deity. And of course, we didn't do that. And the Indian demigod temple offered to take Ganesh and do all the yagyas and everything, and they wouldn't give it to him. Very strange. I think they just locked him up somewhere and left. So Ganesh can overcome obstacles, but by worshiping the spiritual master, we can overcome much more obstacles. Okay, someone read it.
Raganuga Bhakti.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. The demigods. One should not neglect to offer due respect to the demigods. One may not be a devotee of demigods, but that does not mean that he should be disrespectful to them. For example, A Vaishnava is not a devotee of Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma, but he is duty-bound to offer all respects to such highly positioned demigods. According to Vaishnava philosophy, one should offer respect even to an ant. So then what is there to speak of such exalted persons as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma? In the Padma Purana, it is said, Krishna or Hari is the master of all demigods, and therefore he is always worshipable. But this does not mean that one should not offer respect to the demigods. Hare Krishna. My understanding is that as Vaishnavas, we are not to worship the demigods. However, we are to show respect to all the demigods because these are highly exalted personalities. And we know that we are to even show respect to ants, how much more such exalted personalities. So we shouldn't condemn those who worship demigods. However, we shouldn't also join in worshiping them, but we show respect and understanding to what they are doing. And I think that should be the attitude of a Vaishnava. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I have one question that is written there. We should not disrespect the demigod, but we have the demigods deities like in Ganesha in our altar. So we should keep it. Is okay if we can keep them in our altar.
We should what?
We have the Ganesha Murti in our altar because our in-laws they were worshipping it. So we have the Ganesha, Lord Ganesha's Murti. So we can, if we can keep it in the altar, is okay, no?
On our main altar in the temple?
In the house.
Better to have a separate.
Separate.
Yeah, like traditional, well, like in Chopati, Ganesh is the Lord of doorways. And so over the entrance to the temple, there's a little Ganesh. And you would pray to Ganesh, please bless me to serve Krishna nicely. But don't put him on the same altar with Krishna.
Okay, but can we put it down to the Krishna's down the step of in the
Not
altar?
on the same altar, no.
Not on the same altar.
Normally, but when we're dealing with new people that have been worshiping demigods, we just tell them to do it properly. You offer the prasadam of Krishna to the demigod and everything. They like to Krishna Kirtan. But we don't, you can keep them, you give them prasad from Krishna, but you give them a separate place.
Separate.
Even in Vrindavan, in the Radha Govinda, Naya Radha Govinda temple, it's behind the old Radha Govinda. When you come in, it's a very big temple room. So when you come in, there's a little hallway leading to the big temple room. And on the right side of that hallway, there's a Ganesh. So you take the blessings of Ganesh to worship Krishna. Not that you worship Ganesh, he's not on the altar with Krishna. Even the Indian man, was telling those devotees that brought Ganesh, he wanted us to put him on the temple altar. He said, no, you don't do that. He understood that. But they have the demigod Durga temple. They said, we can keep Ganesh. All right.
Okay, okay, Maharaj. Thank you.
So the last section, maybe probably the last for the day, is not giving pain to any living entity. So who is going to read that now? Kavicandra Prabhu, can you please do us the honor of doing the last paragraph, last section?
Okay. Not giving pain to any living entity. This is the statement of Mahabharata. A person who does not disturb or cause painful action in the mind of any living entity, who treats everyone just like a loving father does his children, whose heart is so pure, certainly very soon become favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In so-called civilized society, there's sometimes agitation against cruelty to animals, but at the same time, regular slaughterhouses are always maintained. So a Vaishnava is not like that. A Vaishnava can never support animal slaughter or even give pain to any living entity. So I remember very clearly, sometime when Guru Maharaj comes to Lagos, and then we ask the devotee to get him some limb. And you see sometimes the devotee, they will go and cut the the branch of the limb. And Guru Maharaj say, why do you have to do that?
Cut it, they just break it off. Huge branch.
Yeah, they will break it off.
With total violence.
Yes, Guru Maharaj will say, no, we should not do that. So that is
what
this
believes.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. So that's the same thing is mentioned here. We should feel for all these living entities who are around. And this is how devotees are, this is how the Vaishnavas they feel. They can feel all the living entities around, not only women, but the animals, the plants, and all those things. They are very conscious of all this living entity. So in this way, when we are very conscious like this, we automatically will please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because everything is automatically connected to the Supreme. So devotees, they can understand this and they can feel this and they have realized this. So it's very easy for them to love Krishna. So we can follow and yes, Guru Maharaj.
This especially applies to devotees, other devotees. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was stressing all the time. In fact, I've said this many times, but the last time I saw him, I went to America somehow or other, that devotee in Ivory Coast was able to give me a ticket, and so when I was leaving, I said, do you have any last instructions for the devotees in Africa? And I was not able to record at the time. It was in the old days when we didn't have so many machines so easily available. But he said, I think the first thing he said was, don't quarrel amongst yourselves. So he told me he was always stressing that all the time. But every time he came, there was so many quarrels going on, and he was quite disturbed by it all the time. So, especially not violent towards other devotees. But charity begins at home. All right. So time is up. Thank you. It went very fast because everybody was participating nicely and giving intelligent commentaries. All right. Thank you very much.
Please, I would like to ask, on the 4th of September, which is for destiny, I wouldn't know if you could be able to school us out about 30 minutes, 1 hour for us on West Africa, because we're looking at having an online program.
Yeah, I'm sure I can. It just, you have to tell me the time. I'll have to work out the time I can do it.
Okay, we're looking at any time between 10 and 12 or 1 p.m. West African time. We are in India now. I guess you'll still be in India by that time.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
only
if you're in India,
1 week. So,
okay, that's good. So
see what else I have, a few other things on that day, so I'll work it out.
So we are 4.5 hours behind India. Let's say
1 o'clock, that means 6:30 in the evening.
come again.
1 o'clock Ghana timing means 6:30 in the evening.
Yeah, I'm looking at something earlier than that. We are trying to organize a program between 10 and 1 p.m. Nigerian time, which is 9 o'clock Ghana time to 9 to 12 Ghana time, 10 to 1 p.m. Nigerian time. So that's the time I'm looking at, because we're trying to schedule some
Okay,
other
I'll
stuff.
work it out, because we probably won't have this class on that day then, right?
Yeah, definitely. The next class is not going to be there. It's just going to be for
So,
understanding.
I have a few others, so I have to check their timing. All right.
Okay, no worries. Okay, no worries.
Thank you all very much.
So anytime
Guru
from 2:30
Maharaj.
be very good for us. Anytime
The
from
next
2:30.
one is a big one. Offenses to be avoided, all 64 of them.
Yeah, we'll be doing that tomorrow. Same time, Maharaj.
Prabhupada said that's only the surface. If I told you everything, you would faint, he said. Okay. Wow, nice picture behind there.
Thank you,
Dolly.
Maharaj.
Okay.
Thank you,
Kavi's picture is not very nice.
Maharaj.
So, Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Jai, Sri Kavicandra Swami Maharaj ki jai.